Tonight, we leave the modern world behind for the quiet of the Middle Ages. Close your eyes and listen. You are back in time, safe and warm. Let the story begin. You stir from a restless, shallow sleep, the rough wool blanket clinging to your skin, the chill of the unlit room seeping into your bones. The air, even in the stillness of pre-dawn, carries the faint, persistent ghost of your trade, a stale, animalistic tang that clings to the very fabric of your dwelling, a subtle promise of the day's coming work. The rough floorboards beneath your bare feet feel cold and unyielding as you rise, and the quiet creak of the ancient timbers above is the only sound in the oppressive darkness, a soft murmur in the hushed, sleeping city. You move with a practiced slowness, each motion deliberate, conserving the scant warmth that clings to your body, anticipating the inevitable chill of the lane and the heavier, more pervasive cold of the raw materials awaiting you. The narrow lane outside your door remains cloaked in the deep, inky blackness that stubbornly resists the first, faint suggestion of dawn, the cobblestones slick with the night's dampness, their uneven surfaces a familiar texture beneath your worn boots. A distant, muffled bark of a dog is swallowed by the pre-morning quiet, and the faint, acrid scent of wood smoke, mingling with the sharper, more immediate reek of refuse and stagnant water from the overflowing gutters, fills your nostrils. You pull your thick, patched tunic tighter around your shoulders, the coarse fabric scratching gently against your neck, and begin the well-worn journey towards the butcher's stalls, the weight of the coming day's tasks already settling upon your shoulders, a dull, physical ache. The butcher's lane, even at this early hour, already hums with a low, industrious murmur, the dull thud of cleavers on chopping blocks echoing softly from within the shuttered shops, a rhythmic, deep pulse that resonates through the cold, damp air. Here, the pervasive scent of blood and raw meat overlays the city's usual bouquet, a heavy, metallic tang that you have long ceased to truly notice, yet it is always present, a constant companion to your work. You approach the designated stall, the air growing colder and heavier with the concentrated presence of the day's offal, and there they sit, stacked in grotesque, glistening mounds. The vast, heavy sacks of congealed animal fat, the beef suet, the sheep fat, the lardy trimmings, all waiting for your hands. Your fingers, already calloused and toughened, close around the coarse burlap of the first sack, the material rough and stiff against your palms. The weight settles into your shoulders as you hoist it upward, feeling the soft, yielding mass shift within its confines. You carry it to the great rendering cauldron, your footsteps steady and measured across the worn flagstones. The cauldron itself is a marvel of the chandler's crafter massive iron vessel, blackened by years of use, its curved belly wide enough that you could curl inside it if needed. It hangs from a sturdy chain above the rendering fire, and you can already feel the gentle warmth radiating from the coals below, carefully banked to provide slow, even heat. You untie the rough cord binding the sack's mouth and begin to tip the contents into the waiting vessel. The suet tumbles forth in pale, creamy chunks, some pieces as large as your fist, others crumbling into smaller fragments. The fat has a clean, almost sweet smell, nothing like the rancid odor you once feared. This is fresh tallow, properly stored in the cool cellars, and it will render down into the finest quality wax. Piece by piece, you feed the cauldron, watching as the pale chunks begin to settle into layers. The heat beneath is perfect, not too fierce, for that would scorch the fat and ruin its quality, but steady and patient. Master Aldrich taught you this patience, how the best tallow comes from slow rendering, from allowing the fat to melt gradually, releasing its pure oils without burning. You move to the second sack, this one filled with sheep fat, slightly yellower in hue and softer in texture. It joins the beef suet in the cauldron, and you use a long wooden paddle to gently stir the mass. The paddle is smooth from countless turnings, its handle worn to fit your grip perfectly. As the fat begins to warm, it starts its transformation. The solid chunks slowly soften at their edges, becoming glossy and translucent. Tiny rivulets of liquid fat begin to pool at the bottom of the cauldron, catching the firelight with a golden shimmer. You watch this alchemy with quiet satisfaction, adding another carefully measured log to the fire. The workshop fills with the warm, meaty scent of rendering tallow. It mingles with the ever-present aroma of beeswax, creating a smell that speaks of industry and purpose. You continue your stirring, maintaining a steady rhythm that prevents any portion from sitting too long against the hot iron. Time passes in this peaceful labor. The pile of solid fat gradually diminishes, melting down into an increasing pool of liquid gold. You can see through the clear tallow to the bottom of the cauldron now, watching the last stubborn pieces surrender to the heat. Small bits of meat and tissue, the cracklings, float to the surface, and you carefully skim these away with a perforated ladle, setting them aside in a clay bowl. When the rendering is complete, you use a thick cloth to protect your hands as you carefully tilt the cauldron, pouring the purified tallow through a clean linen straining cloth into waiting stone vessels. The liquid flows like honey, smooth and golden, filtering through the cloth to remove any remaining impurities. Each vessel fills with this precious substance, the foundation of your craft. You set the strained tallow aside to cool slightly, reaching that perfect temperature warm enough to remain liquid, but cool enough to begin thickening. While you wait, you turn to prepare the wicks, selecting strong cotton cords from the basket near the window. Each wick must be cut to precise length, tied to its wooden rod, and checked for straightness. The cooling tallow develops a skin on its surface, and you test it with one finger. Perfect! You lift the first wick assembly, holding it steady as you dip it into the vessel. The tallow clings to the cotton, coating it in a thin, even layer. You lift it clear, holding it steady while the excess drips back into the vessel, watching as the coating begins to harden in the cool air. This is the rhythm of your work. Dip, lift, wait, dip again. Each immersion adds another layer, building the candle slowly, patiently. Your hands move with practiced certainty, and your mind settles into the peaceful repetition of the task, knowing that each candle you create will bring light to someone's darkness. The cauldron's embrace. Fat to fire, you begin your day as the first grey light barely touches the cobblestones, long before the city truly stirs. and the cool morning air still holds the damp scent of slumbering stone and distant river mists. Your shoulders already anticipate the familiar ache as you navigate the narrow, winding lanes, your boots making a soft, rhythmic scrape against the uneven ground, a comforting sound in the quiet pre-dawn world. You are bound for the butchers, a place of sharp, metallic smells that cling to the very timber of their stalls, and you move with a slow, deliberate purpose, your breath a faint, fleeting cloud in the chill air. The sacks you collect are heavy, each one bulging with the congealed bounty of yesterday's slaughter. Great, misshapen lumps of beef suet and sheep fat, cold and stiff to the touch, their surfaces slick with a film that hints at their inherent greasiness even through the coarse weave of the sacking. You hoist them one by one onto the waiting handcart, feeling the dense weight settle with a soft thud, a dull, resonant sound that vibrates through your arms, and you push the handcart along the cobblestone path, the iron-rimmed wheels clattering softly, a gentle counterpoint to the distant hum of the village. The late afternoon sun casts long, dappled shadows through the canopy of ancient oaks that line your route, their leaves whispering secrets in the breeze. You inhale deeply, the air filled with the sweet scent of wildflowers and the faint, earthy aroma of the cheese you've just collected. The village of Meadow Grove is nestled in a valley, surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests. It's a place where time seems to slow, where the pace of life is dictated by the changing seasons and the rhythm of nature. As you push the handcart, you notice the small details that make this place so peaceful. A group of children playing by the village well, their laughter ringing out like tiny bells. An elderly couple sitting on a bench outside their cottage, their heads bent together in quiet conversation. The blacksmith, his muscular arms gleaming with sweat, shaping a horseshoe with careful, practiced strokes. You pass by the bakery, and the warm, comforting smell of fresh bread wafts out, mingling with the scent of the cheese. Your stomach rumbles softly, reminding you that it's been hours since your last meal. You make a mental note to stop by the bakery on your way back, perhaps treat yourself to a warm loaf and a wedge of cheese. The path narrows as you approach the edge of the village, the cottages thinning out and giving way to fields of golden wheat that sway gently in the breeze. You spot the old stone bridge that spans the rushing river, its moss-covered stones a testament to its age. You remember the stories your grandmother used to tell you about the bridge, how it was built by the first settlers of Meadow Grove, how it had stood the test of time and countless floods. As you cross the bridge, you pause for a moment, leaning against the weathered stone parapet. You watch the water below, clear and sparkling, dancing over the smooth stones, its surface rippling with the occasional leap of a fish. The sound of the water is soothing, a gentle, rhythmic lullaby that seems to wash away the cares of the day. On the other side of the bridge, you turn onto a narrow, winding path that leads up the hillside. The path is flanked by wildflowers, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the lush greenery. You recognize the purple spikes of thistles, the delicate yellow of buttercups, the deep blue of cornflowers. Bees buzz lazily from flower to flower, their wings a blur of motion, their bodies dusted with pollen. As you climb higher, the path becomes steeper, and you feel the burn in your legs. But the effort is worth it, for the view from the top is breathtaking. You can see the entire valley laid out before you, the village a tiny, picturesque dot in the center. The fields stretch out like a patchwork quilt, the colors shifting and changing with the seasons. Beyond the fields, the forest looms, a vast green expanse that seems to go on forever. You take a moment to catch your breath, then continue along the path. It's a narrow, winding trail, barely wide enough for the handcart, but you know it well. You've traveled this path countless times, and each time you're struck by the beauty of your surroundings. The trees here are ancient and gnarled, their bark rough and textured, their leaves a vibrant, lush green. Birds flit from branch to branch, their songs a symphony of sweet, melodic notes. As you round a bend, you come across a small, secluded clearing. It's a hidden gem, a secret oasis of peace and tranquility. The ground is carpeted with soft, velvety moss, and wildflowers dot the landscape, their colors a riot of red, yellow, and blue. In the center of the clearing is a small, crystal-clear pool, its surface still and serene. You remember the stories of the village elders, how this pool was said to have healing properties, how it was a place of pilgrimage for the sick and the weary. You push the handcart to the edge of the pool and take a moment to rest. You sit on a fallen log, its bark rough and weathered, and listen to the sounds of the forest. The rustle of leaves, the chirp of birds, the distant hum of the village. It's a symphony of nature, a harmonious blend of sounds that seems to seep into your very soul, soothing and calming. You reach into the sacking and pull out one of the aged and weathered, and listen to the sounds of the forest. The rustle of leaves, the chirp of birds, the distant hum of the village. It's a symphony, aged and weathered, and listen to the sounds of the forest. It's a symphony of the purest gnat, Acha, a harmonious blend of sounds that seems to seep into your very soul, soothing and calming. You reach into the sacking and pull out one of the apples. Its skin is cool and smooth in your palm, a deep ruby red dappled with gold where the afternoon sun once touched it. You breathe in its crisp, sweet scent, a fragrance of orchards and autumn rain. Taking a slow, deliberate bite, the quiet crunch echoes softly in the clearing. The taste is a gentle burst of sun-warmed honey and fresh earth, simple and profoundly satisfying. As you chew, a contented sigh escapes you, blending with the soft coo of a wood pigeon from the canopy above. You step through the low archway, leaving the thin, biting chill of the pre-dawn lane behind you, and immediately the air closes around you, thick and warm and heavy, with the pervasive, cloying scent of stale fat. Your shoulders ache already, a familiar, dull throb from yesterday's toil, and you shrug them slightly, feeling the coarse wool of your tunic shift against your skin. Outside, the world is quiet, save for the distant, muffled clatter of a cartwheel on cobblestones, but in here, there is only the profound, still warmth and the scent that clings to every surface, a memory of countless days of rendering. You reach for the first sack, its rough burlap cool and yielding beneath your fingers, and grunt softly as you heave it onto your shoulder, the weight of congealed beef suet and sheep, fat familiar, comforting burden. The sack settles, a shapeless, heavy mass, and you carry it slowly, deliberately, into the deeper gloom of your windowless workshop. The only sounds your own measured breathing and the soft, scraping drag of your worn boots on the dirt floor. The workshop swallows you whole, a cavern of shadowed corners and the towering, blackened silhouette of the cauldron, perpetually stained with the residue of countless meltings. A single high slit of a window, no larger than a man's hand, allows only a sliver of weak, grey light to pierce the thick air, illuminating the slow, lazy drift of dust motes that hang suspended, timeless and silent. The air itself feels viscous, almost chewable, and the rancid sweetness of rendering fat is not just a smell, but a physical presence that coats the inside of your nose and the back of your throat. You slide the heavy sack from your shoulder, letting it fall with a soft, muffled thump onto the packed earth floor, the sound absorbed instantly by the dense quiet. Another trip, and another, until a small, irregular mound of these shapeless, fat-filled burdens sits waiting, a silent promise of the day's slow, deliberate work. You approach the first sack, its coarse weave now slightly warmer from your body heat, and untie the thick, knotted string that secures its mouth. The fabric peels back with a faint, dry rustle, revealing the pale, waxy blocks within solid, unyielding slabs of congealed animal fat, cool and slick to the touch, their surfaces patterned with faint, marbled veins. You select a cleaver from its hook on the wall, the heavy iron cool and solid in your hand, its blade dulled by years of relentless use. Lifting it, you bring it down with a slow, practiced force, the blade biting into the cold mass with a satisfying, deep thud chop. The fat gives way reluctantly, splitting into irregular, glistening chunks that tumble onto the dirt floor with soft, wet sounds. This rhythmic hacking continues, a quiet, monotonous symphony of effort, each stroke sending a fine, almost imperceptible spray of chilled grease onto your face and forearms, a cold, oily kiss that you no longer even notice. The cauldron looms, vast and dark, its interior a hollow cavern awaiting its viscous bounty. Each hacked chunk of fat, still cold and firm, is lifted with a greasy hand and tossed into the blackened maw. There is no sharp clang, only a dull, heavy plop as the fat lands, sometimes glancing off the soot-darkened sides with a soft, wet splat, leaving a shimmering, opaque smear. The chunks accumulate, building a pale, irregular mountain within the iron belly, gradually filling the space with their waxy presence. The air, already thick with the scent of old fat, begins to subtly shift, a faint, almost imperceptible warmth rising from the cauldron's base, hinting at the slow transformation to come. Your hands grow slicker, the cold grease permeating the lines of your skin, a permanent, familiar coating that never truly washes away. Beneath the cauldron, the remnants of yesterday's fire glow with a faint, ruddy warmth. You stoop, feeling the gentle heat on your face, and begin to carefully feed dry kindling and split logs into the stone hearth. The wood catches, first with a soft, almost hesitant crackle, then a more confident hiss as the flames begin to lick and grow, their orange light dancing a slow, mesmerizing jig across the rough, smoke-stained walls. The air around the cauldron grows steadily warmer, a gentle, humid embrace that promises the melting will soon begin. You watch the flames, their soft murmur the only sound for a time, a quiet, soothing presence in the vast stillness of the workshop. The heat creeps up, a slow, patient wave, beginning to warm the iron, transferring its energy into the waiting, silent fat. And then it begins. A subtle sheen appears on the surface of the fat chunks nearest the cauldron's heated sides, a faint, oily glow that catches the meager light. Small, hesitant beads of moisture form, then expand, releasing tiny pockets of trapped air that rise with a delicate, almost inaudible pop. The first true bubbles emerge, slow and deliberate, forming at the edges where the fat meets the hot iron, expanding with a gentle, nascent gurgle. The sound is barely there, a whisper of a promise, but it signals the slow alchemy underway. The pervasive, cloying smell intensifies, no longer merely stale, but now actively rendering, a rich, heavy aroma that fills your lungs with each slow, even breath clinging to your tongue. The edges of the fat begin to soften, to yield, transforming from solid white to a translucent, shimmering gold. As the heat intensifies, the cauldron truly awakens. The faint gurgle deepens, becoming a steady, rhythmic chorus, a constant, low burble as the solid mass surrenders its form. The chunks collapse into themselves, sinking slowly into the accumulating pool of liquid, releasing further pockets of air with a more pronounced plop. The surface transforms into a vast, shimmering sea of melted gold, a viscous, yellowish liquid that moves with a slow, deliberate grace, its surface alive with the lazy swell and fall of convection currents. Small, grayish impurities, bits of muscle, fragments of bone, and other detritus float sluggishly on the surface, carried by the slow eddies. The smell is now overwhelming, a heavy, almost nauseating sweetness that saturates the air, a thick, greasy mist that you can almost taste, a permanent fixture of this small, warm world. You reach for the skimming ladle, its handle long and smooth, worn to a permanent slickness by generations of hands, its bowl a dark, sooty metal. The weight of it is familiar, a comforting heft. Slowly, deliberately, you dip the shallow bowl into the shimmering liquid, allowing the impurities to gather within its curve. The fat is hot, radiating a humid warmth that rises and settles on your face, dampening your hair. You lift the ladle, a small, gentle slosh of liquid announcing its departure from the main body, the collected dross a grayish, unappetizing scum within. The motion is slow, almost meditative, each dip and lift a moment of quiet focus, a small act of purification. The perpetual gurgle of the melting fat continues, a low, constant companion, providing a soothing, monotonous backdrop to the silent work. The process of skimming is an exercise in endless, patient repetition. Dip, collect, lift, and empty. The collected dross, a gray, fibrous mass, is gently scraped into a waiting waste bucket with a dull plop, a sound that soon blends into the general hum of the workshop. Again and again, the ladle descends, cutting through the viscous surface, drawing out the unwanted elements. The surface of the melted fat slowly, imperceptibly, begins to clear, becoming a more uniform, translucent gold. Your movements are economical, unhurried, each scoop identical to the last, and to the hundreds that have come before. The warmth from the cauldron permeates your hands, a deep, bone-weary heat that is both comforting and inescapable. The air remains thick, humid, and heavy with the smell of rendering, a constant, enveloping presence that numbs the senses over time, transforming from an assault to a dull, background thrum. Turning your attention from the cauldron for a moment, you reach for a bundle of wicks, twisted flaxen cord, dry and rough beneath your fingertips. The faint, earthy scent of linen rises from the fibers as you untie the knot that binds them. Each cord is inspected, a simple, repetitive movement of your fingers, ensuring its integrity, its readiness for its slow transformation. You gather a small cluster, carefully knotting one end, the rough cord scratching gently against your calloused skin. The small, focused movements of your hands are precise, automatic, a quiet dance of muscle memory. There is no urgency, only the quiet rhythm of preparation, the subtle rustle of the flax, the only sound in the momentary silence, a brief respite from the gurgle and slosh of the rendering fat. With a bundle of wicks prepared, you approach the cooling vat, a smaller, shallower vessel positioned away from the direct heat of the fire, where the rendered tallow has been allowed to settle and cool slightly. The surface here is still liquid, but cooler, more viscous than the contents of the cauldron. You hold the wicks, their knotted ends together, and slowly, gently, lower them into the warm, yellowish liquid. There is a soft, almost imperceptible hiss as the dry flax meets the hot fat, a brief moment of sizzle quickly absorbed. You withdraw them immediately, lifting them slowly. You wake before the sun has even considered the horizon, the air in your narrow room already heavy with the ghost of yesterday's rendering. You move slowly, your joints stiff, your skin permanently slick with a fine, invisible film of tallow that no amount of scrubbing can ever truly reach. The lane outside your windowless workshop is a canyon of gray shadows, damp and silent, save for the distant, rhythmic thud of a butcher's cleaver echoing from the shambles. You step out into the cool, biting air to greet the carter, whose wagon groans under the weight of the morning's delivery. There are sacks great, heavy hempen bags bulging, with the raw, cold leavings of the city's appetite. You reach out and heave the first one onto your shoulder. It is cold, shockingly so, and the dampness of the congealed suet seeps through the coarse fabric of the sack, pressing against your tunic. You carry it inside, your boots sliding slightly on the floor of your workshop, which has become a smooth, waxy landscape over years of spills and splatters. You drop the sack, and it lands with a dull, wet thud that vibrates through the soles of your feet. The world is quiet, and the work is beginning. Inside the workshop, the darkness is thick, illuminated only by the low, orange glow of the embers in your hearth. You take up your heavy, notched knife, its wooden handle darkened and smoothed by the oils of your palms. You begin to hack the cold fat into chunks. The sound is a repetitive, soft thwack crunch as the blade bites into the white, waxy mounds of beef suet and sheep fat. You do not hurry. There is no reason to hurry. You work with a steady, hypnotic rhythm, your hands becoming coated in a pale, creamy paste as the fat warms slightly against your skin. You toss the chunks into the vast, blackened iron cauldron that hangs over the rekindled fire. Each piece lands with a soft, greasy splatter, and as the heat begins to rise, the air changes. It thickens. It becomes a physical presence, a heavy, cloying blanket of scent that smells of old bone, salt, and the deep, primal musk of the animal. It is a scent that does not drift. It settles, filling your lungs, coating the back of your throat, and wrapping itself around the rafters. You breathe it in, slow and steady, as the solid white blocks begin to yield to the flame. The transition from solid to liquid is a slow, mesmerizing alchemy. You stand over the cauldron, a long-handled wooden paddle in your hand, stirring with a circular motion that feels as though it could last for an eternity. The yellow-white chunks bob and swirl in the growing pool of liquid gold. The heat from the hearth radiates against your face, a dry, pulsing warmth that contrasts with the slick, oily dampness of your clothes. You watch as the fat melts, bubbling softly at the edges, releasing a low, constant hiss that sounds like a distant rainfall. As the liquid rises, so do the impurities, the bits of gristle, the stray hairs, the fragments of skin. They rise to the surface in a frothy, brownish foam. You take up your long-handled ladle, its bowl pitted and scarred from years of service, and you begin the skimming. It is a task of infinite patience. You dip the ladle just beneath the surface, drawing it back slowly to capture the dross, then emptying it into a side bucket with a wet, rhythmic plop. You repeat this motion 100 times, then 100 more. The surface of the tallow must be as clear as a forest pool before the dipping can begin. You are safe and warm in the gloom, and the world is quiet. Once the tallow is rendered and purified, you swing the cauldron away from the direct heat of the fire, allowing it to cool just enough that it remains liquid, but loses its aggressive, searing bite. You move to the dipping frame, where bundles of wicks hang like long, thin ghosts. The wicks are made of rough hemp, twisted tightly and tied to wooden rods. You take the first rod in both hands. Your grip is firm despite the grease that coats every inch of the wood. You walk to the vat of liquid tallow, and with a motion so slow it barely seems to disturb the air, you lower the wicks into the golden depths. You hear the faint, microscopic sizzle as the fibers drink in the hot fat. You hold them there for a heartbeat, 2 heartbeats, then you lift them out. The wicks emerge shimmering, dripping heavy, viscous tears of yellow fat back into the vat. Drip. 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 The sound is the heartbeat of your day, a steady liquid ticking that marks the passage of hours. You hang the rod back on the frame to cool, the thin layer of tallow turning from translucent gold to a dull, opaque cream as the air touches it. You move to the second rod, then the third, then the fourth. By the time you return to the first rod, the tallow has hardened enough to accept another layer. You dip it again. The process is a grinding, beautiful monotony. Each dip adds only a hair's breadth of thickness to the candle. You are building light, layer by agonizing layer, through the simple repetition of your own steady breathing and the slow rise and fall of your arms. Your muscles ache with a dull, familiar throb, but it is a peaceful ache, one that grounds you in the present moment. The workshop is a sanctuary of grease and shadow. The dirt floor beneath your feet has long since been buried under a thick, resilient crust of spilled tallow, creating a surface that is soft and slightly yielding, muffling the sound of your movements. Everything you touch, the walls, the tools, your own hair is infused with the essence of the fat. It is a world of slick surfaces and muted colors, where the only thing that matters is the next dip, the next drip, the next layer of light. As the afternoon light begins to fail in the lane outside, the candles on the frames have grown thick and lumpy. They are not the elegant, white beeswax tapers of the cathedral. They are stout, utilitarian cylinders of tallow, smelling of the farmyard and the hearth. They are uneven, with ridges and bumps where the fat cooled too quickly or a stray breeze caught a drip. You take a sharp knife and trim the ragged bottoms of the candles, the curls of excess tallow falling to the floor like pale wood shavings. These candles will gutter and smoke when they are lit. They will smell of burning fat and will cast a flickering, uncertain light across the hovels and workshops of the city. But they are yours. You have pulled them from the dross and the dark, through the heat of the fire and the weight of the ladle. You stack them in the corner, the waxy piles growing higher as the shadows lengthen. Your hands are heavy with the day's work, your skin glowing in the dying firelight as you prepare to bank the embers for the night. You are surrounded by the fruits of your labor, a harvest of tallow that will keep the darkness at bay for another night. The air is still, the cauldron is empty, and the world is quiet. You are safe and warm. You begin your day, as you always do, by tracing the familiar, uneven cobblestones of the grimy lane, your boots scuffing softly against the damp stones, a low, rhythmic sound that echoes faintly in the pre-dawn quiet. The air, still cool and carrying the distant scent of hearth smoke and something indefinably organic, offers a temporary reprieve before the true work begins. Ahead, the butcher's stalls, shuttered and dark, hold their promise of the day's raw material, and you feel the familiar ache in your shoulders, already anticipating the dead weight. The first sack, coarse and stiff beneath your calloused fingers, is a formidable presence, its contents already dense and unyielding, a frozen block of congealed animal fat, beef suet, sheep fat, all indiscriminately lumped together, its coldness seeping through the thick weave even before you heave it onto your back. The world is quiet around you, save for the strained grunt that escapes your lips and the soft scrape of the sack as you adjust its bulk, the subtle, almost imperceptible shift of weight settling against your spine. Back in your workshop, the air immediately thickens, a palpable wall of warmth and a permanently rancid odor that clings to your clothes, your hair, even the very pores of your skin, a heavy, enveloping shroud. There are no windows here, only the dim, flickering light cast by a single sputtering rushlight hanging precariously from a soot-blackened beam, its feeble glow barely pushing back the encroaching shadows. The walls sweat with a greasy condensation, and the very dust motes dancing in the meager light seem to shimmer with a faint, oily sheen. You unload the sacks with a weary sigh, the heavy thud of each lumpy parcel hitting the dirt floor, sending a small puff of fine, grimy dust into the already laden air. A soft, dry sound swallowed quickly by the oppressive silence. Now the cleaver, its blade dulled by countless impacts, feels cool and solid in your hand, a familiar weight. The first block of fat, still rigid and cold from its journey, resists your initial attempts, offering a slick, almost rubbery defiance as you press the blade against its pale, marbled surface. You brace it against the scarred wooden block, the rough grain of the timber a faint impression beneath the greasy film that coats everything, and then, with a slow, deliberate swing, you bring the cleaver down. Zwagi. The sound is muffled, heavy, a dull, satisfying thud that vibrates through your arm, and a small, almost imperceptible tremor runs through the block as a piece breaks away, its edges jagged and uneven. Again and again, the rhythmic thwack, thwack, each strike sending tiny flecks of cold, white fat skittering across the grimy floor, landing with soft, almost soundless whispers. The air fills with the faint, metallic scent of the cold blade mingling with the raw, earthy smell of the fat, a smell that slowly begins to warm and intensify, subtly changing its character with each severed chunk. Your hands grow slick, coated in a fine, greasy film that never truly washes away, a persistent reminder of your trade. The vast, blackened cauldron, already warm from the steady, low fire crackling beneath its belly, waits patiently. You pick up the hacked chunks, their surfaces now gleaming faintly with a nascent sheen, and toss them in, one by one. Each piece lands with a soft, greasy sizzle and a plume of fragrant steam that rises in lazy spirals toward the rafters above. The rendered fat begins to pool at the bottom of the cauldron, golden and clear, catching the firelight like liquid amber. You stir slowly with your long wooden paddle, its handle worn smooth by years of use, feeling the gentle resistance as the tallow melts and mingles. The heat is constant but never harsh, a patient warmth that coaxes rather than forces the transformation. Around you, the workshop settles into its evening rhythm. Shadows dance along the stone walls, cast by the flickering flames beneath your cauldron. The scent of melting fat, earthy and honest, fills the space, a smell that speaks of labor and craft, of light being born from humble beginnings. You lean against the sturdy workbench, watching the contents of your cauldron bubble gently. Small pockets of air escape from the melting chunks, breaking the surface with quiet pops that punctuate the soft crackle of the fire. The liquid grows deeper, richer, as more solid becomes fluid under the steady application of heat. On the shelf beside you rest rows of wicks you twisted yesterday, their cotton fibers braided tight and true. Each one hangs from a small wooden rod, ready to be dipped when the tallow reaches the perfect consistency. You've made thousands of candles in your time here, yet the process never loses its quiet satisfaction. The way something rough becomes refined, darkness becomes light. The fire beneath needs tending. You select 2 more split logs from the neat stack against the wall, their bark rough beneath your fingers. Placing them carefully onto the coals, you watch as small flames begin to lick along their edges, finding purchase in the dry wood. The heat intensifies slightly, just enough to maintain the perfect temperature. You return to stirring, the paddle making slow circles through the thickening tallow. Your movements are meditative, unhurried. There is no rush in this work, no urgency that cannot wait for the proper time. The tallow will tell you when it's ready, when the last solid pieces have surrendered to the heat, when the liquid runs clear and smooth. Through the small window, you notice the last traces of daylight fading from the sky. Soon, the village will rely entirely on lamplight and candle glow. Your work here, in this warm workshop with its patient fire and bubbling cauldron, will bring illumination to evening meals, to late prayers, to the careful mending of clothes after the day's labor ends. The thought brings a quiet contentment. You continue your stirring, watching the tallow swirl in golden eddies, listening to the fire's gentle song. The night deepens outside, but here, surrounded by the tools and rhythms of your craft, you are exactly where you belong. The cauldron simmers on, transforming what was given into something needed, and you tend it with steady, practiced hands. In golden eddies, listening to the fire's gentle song. The night deepens outside, but here, surrounded by the tools and rhythms of your craft, you are exactly where you